There is a strange, almost invisible phenomenon that happens as people grow internally. They become quieter, not empty quiet, more grounded. They start sharing less, posting less, explaining less. Their victories become private, their plans become sacred, and their emotions become something they protect instead of display. This shift confuses those who knew them before. Why did they disappear? Why don't they talk about their life anymore? Why do they seem distant? But the truth is that they haven't gone missing. They've gone inward. Because true internal growth does something profound. It dissolves the need to be seen. This video explores the psychology behind this transformation, why the deeper a person becomes, the less they feel like proving, explaining, or showcasing anything, and why this silence often marks the beginning of their most powerful phase of life. People who are still insecure or emotionally ungrounded often have a deep need to show their progress. They want to prove that they're improving. They want their achievements to be seen, their growth to be acknowledged. Validation becomes a mirror, one they desperately want others to hold for them. But as someone begins to grow internally, something remarkable happens. They stop needing that mirror. The person who once depended on applause starts valuing peace far more than praise. They no longer chase external confirmation because they finally begin to understand their own internal worth. Their self-image stops fluctuating based on other people's reactions. Emotional maturity creates a form of independence, one that feels like a quiet liberation. They no longer feel compelled to explain themselves. They no longer want to justify their choices. They no longer seek permission to exist as they are. This doesn't mean they stop achieving. Paradoxically, they often accomplish more during this phase. They simply no longer feel the urge to publicize it. Growth becomes something they live, not perform. The loudest people often have the deepest insecurities. The quietest people often have the strongest foundations. This chapter marks the beginning of a transition. The person who once needed the world to notice them now finds something more powerful: inner stability. And once peace becomes more important than validation, the world outside loses much of its influence. People who grow internally start to understand an essential truth. Not everyone deserves access to their inner world. They become selective with their time, their conversations, and their emotional availability. It's not coldness, it's clarity. They've finally learned how expensive their energy is and how draining it can be to share themselves with people who don't respect or understand them. As this awareness deepens, the person naturally begins revealing less. They keep their plans to themselves, not out of secrecy, but out of self-protection. They understand that too much exposure invites interference. Too many opinions create noise. Too much sharing creates vulnerability in places that are neither safe nor useful. This is the stage where people learn the art of silence, not the silence of fear, but the silence of wisdom. They no longer react to everything. They no longer argue with everyone. They no longer explain themselves repeatedly. Their calm becomes intentional. Protecting energy also means protecting dreams. The more a person grows, the more they realize that early exposure weakens their goals. Big transformations require privacy. Personal reinvention needs incubation, and true change happens in the quiet, long before anyone else sees it. What others often misinterpret as withdrawal is simply emotional self-defense, a boundary strengthened, a door closed quietly, a decision to no longer let everyone enter. The person is not disappearing. They are protecting the most valuable thing they have finally built: themselves. One of the most powerful realizations someone has as they evolve is that depth does not translate well into performance. The deeper a person becomes, the more they realize that many of their thoughts, struggles, and transformations are simply too complex to be shared publicly and too personal to be turned into content. The world of superficial display values speed, noise, glamour, and instant consumption, but the inner world values slowness, understanding, stillness, and meaning. These two worlds rarely intersect without something being lost along the way. When people grow inwardly, they begin to cherish experiences for their emotional richness, not their social value. They no longer feel the urge to make everything shareable. Their life becomes less about visibility and more about authenticity. They start refusing to sacrifice the sacredness of their experiences for the fleeting attention of the public eye. There is also a psychological truth at play. Explaining something too soon weakens the emotional process behind it. Talking too early interrupts reflection. Sharing too widely exposes vulnerability in places that aren't safe nor useful. Turning personal growth into performance removes its depth. The more aware a person becomes, the more they understand that some moments are meant to be lived, not displayed. Some victories are meant to be felt, not posted. Some transformations are meant to remain private, protected, and deeply personal. So they show less, not because they have less, but because what they carry inside has grown too meaningful to be placed in the hands of strangers. The greatest shift of internal growth is identity stability. A person who truly knows themselves no longer cares whether others understand them. They no longer feel driven to justify their decisions, tastes, boundaries, or way of living. They stand quietly in their own truth, unmoved by external pressures. This brings an extraordinary sense of freedom. They are no longer trying to impress anyone. They stop performing confidence and begin embodying it. Their silence is not emptiness, it is certainty. Identity clarity eliminates the desire to compare. Self-respect eliminates the desire to compete. Inner fulfillment eliminates the desire to boast. Growth makes a person realize that much of what they once wanted to show was merely a request for recognition, and once they recognize themselves, that need disappears. Their actions become their message. Their choices become their expression. Their presence becomes their statement. They no longer need to convince the world of who they are. They simply live it, quietly, consistently, and confidently. People may notice the change. They may say, "You've become different." But the truth is, the person hasn't become different. They've become themselves. Internal growth is not loud. It is not public. It does not announce itself. It unfolds in silence, strengthens in privacy, and becomes visible only through the subtle but powerful ways a person lives. The more someone grows internally, the less they show. Not because they have become distant, but because they have finally come home to themselves. If you've been sharing less, speaking less, explaining less, you're not fading, you're evolving, and your silence might just be the loudest sign of your maturity.